Today we're going to have a look around the whole of my layout, Wakefield West, which you can see here is in the what was a garage, a two-car garage, approximately 6 metres by 6 metres. So what's that? Is it 24 foot by 24 foot roughly? The layout itself is what is called a folded dog bone style. So if you look up over here, you'll see the top staging behind what will be the colliery. It's not quite up there at the moment, but you can see top staging there. And top staging represents London or London-bound trains, as well as those going to Hull, Doncaster and so on. So we've got sort of two groups. We've got 3 sidings for London, for the London side of things, and then 2 sidings for the Hull and Doncaster side. We then come out of that top staging, and you can see a couple of trains stored there. And then we move underneath the Star Wars Lego all the way along here through what I call Hemsworth Station. So while the Yorkshire Pullman keeps moving around, we come back to Hemsworth Station here. So Hemsworth Station will eventually have a goods shed, which is in the box there, and this set of DCC concept levers will probably control it once I figure out how to work them into the layout itself. And then from Hemsworth we come down the hill now around the top here, and now we're into what I call Arnthorpe. So Arnthorpe is basically a cross between Arnthorpe, which is a yard just north of Wakefield, and Ardsley, which is a bit further towards Leeds. And the reason I've combined the two into Arnthorpe, which you can see in the lovely totem up there, is just because I don't have room for either yard. I probably could have made a representation of Arnthorpe Yard, but definitely not Ardsley. But I'm trying to get as much operation in here as possible. So if we look now, that's what we can see in Arnthorpe Shed. We've got a J50 up there. That's actually from Dave Shakespeare's Tetley's Mills layout, which always sits on the layout and keeps an eye on things. We've got a couple of London Road Models J6s that I've built, and then I think there's a A23, is it, on shed, Thana Fife. We've got a V2 just sitting here at the moment. I've only just finished airbrushing that for weathering, and now I've got to move on to powders and so on, but that will be sometime soon. Here is the coal stage. Now this coal stage represents, was actually a mirror image of one at South Blythe in Sunderland, and I remember reading about it online, about how on payday the guys used to come up, and you can see them in there playing poker on payday, and if you look carefully there's a little hole in the wall, and there should be a guy standing up there looking through that, because apparently they used to spy on to see if the shed foreman had come across, and that was to warn them so they could pick up their poker playing. But yeah, that's the yard of Arnthorpe with a turntable and the engine shed. So one of the scenes you might see a lot, I tend to post here, is of this area. It was one of the areas that I first scenicked. It's got some dipole signals that I'm still in the process of making more eastern region rather than London Midland, but they are London Midland tubular posts, very similar to eastern region tubular post signals. We've got the actual signal box here, and a Modratec lever frame, an interlocked Modratec lever frame there to control the crossover here, and another siding coming into the Arnthorpe yard. And this is probably one of the first structures I built. It was a Metcalfe signal box, which I've sort of made more eastern region by painting the barge boards and trim white as they were. So one of the fun things about operating here is this Modratec lever frame. You can see my fancy uncoupling stick there. That's actually what's called a pickster, toothpick, the mouth and tooth flosser, and they're really good for when you run KDs. So I use them quite regularly, and they're really handy. And thanks to my good friend Anthony on the Border District layout who put me onto that. Hopefully that's enough of the yard. One thing I forgot to mention when we were up here at Arnthorpe is this private colliery coal merchant siding, that is something I've worked on after I finished the main area of Ardsley, or Arnthorpe, wish it was Ardsley. But yeah, having a bit of fun with scenery there. I'm actually thinking of redoing some of these trees. The backdrop is actually one that I took and stitched together myself. It's based on, it's in North Yorkshire, around Byland Abbey. I walked up to the top of a hill and I saw this beautiful scene, and I thought that looked pretty good, and so I've used that as the backdrop here as a sort of generic Yorkshire backdrop with a fairly neutral sky, which is also deliberate. Okay, so if we leave Arnthorpe Yard, we travel down here, downhill further, and we come to probably what will be one of the focus areas of the layout when I finally finish the station area off. But this is called obviously Wakefield Westgate. The backdrop at the back there is a temporary one at the moment, just to see how it fits. I printed that out from using 3D buildings in Google Earth, and stood back about where I'm standing now, and basically took screenshots and stitched them all together, and that became the backdrop. Before we hit Westgate Station itself, we've got what I call Back Garden Lane, which is very similar to the real Back Garden Lane that was in this area in Wakefield in about 1952. It's a little bit combined. The terrace buildings that you see, or the terrace housing that you see there, was probably one more block over, and this whole area was market gardens. And then you moved up into these buildings here. Now, all of these structures, the one on the end is a Metcalfe, I think they call it shop, terrace shop building, which you can see has that. They've got lighting installed as well, but I've modified the roof to give it a bit more different texture. The next set of terrace housing there is actually scratch built to fit between the space that was available there, and then we've got another pretty stock standard Metcalfe terraced house, and then we move into 4 kit bashed Metcalfe buildings to represent reasonably closely the buildings that were there in that exact area in Wakefield around the time, and they lasted pretty well up until the mid-60s, and then they started getting demolished. But the whole intention is that the scene that you can probably see as the Yorkshire Pullman comes through, is to get that looking pretty right so that it looks correct from the station. I've still got some work to do here, but if you look closely, the backdrop itself is centered on Westgate in Wakefield, and then using that as the key to space out the backdrop as it's supposed to go. And fortunately enough, when I did that, the end of the station, old platform of the station, ends here, and if you look up on the backdrop, that's actually the new station, which in real life starts about at the end of the old platform at Westgate. So I was pretty happy that it all fitted in pretty well. But that gives you an overview of Westgate itself. So anybody who remembers Westgate Station from up until the very late 60s, it had this amazing 97-foot clock tower, which obviously I had to get pretty right when I was building the station. What this is, the station itself is a scratch build mostly out of styrene, with a lot of the architectural details cast in polyurethane. Then when I got to the clock tower, you could see the creamy coloured base there. I got that reasonably right, but I really was going to struggle to make a urethane pattern good enough to cast this in urethane and have it nice and square and everything. So in the end, I taught myself how to do some 3D printing, and I drew this up in Tinkercad and printed it out. It's actually in 3 sections. The sort of chamfered bottom bit is one section, then the clock faces with all their architectural details, and then the top section, which originally I was going to do in etched brass, but then I thought I'd try it in using my 3D resin printer, and I'm pretty happy with that. And if you look at the top, the little finial at the top is the only thing that's still got to be etched brass. One of the fun things about doing Wakefield is researching the station. I've been very much helped along by a gentleman from the Wakefield Model Railway Society, or Railway Modeller Society, sorry, John Farline, who's actually the chairman, and I contacted them probably about 10-12 years ago after I found a web page for them, and I joined as an associate member, and I still am, and I've been very lucky that John Farline has been really helpful in providing details. He's written a couple of books on the area with Peter Cookson and others, and that was really handy for me in initial inspiration and then continuing on with the research. So we'll just watch the Yorkshire Pullman run through again. Very lucky day, there must be about 15 services today, 15 sections of the Yorkshire Pullman, but the Yorkshire Pullman here is reasonably accurate for the time. Peppercorn A1 at the front, a combination of sitters and kitchen cars are all pretty much accurate for the period. One of them is renamed, I think Ursula is in there, one of the Pullman cars. And yeah, I'm going to slowly keep working through the layout, through the rolling stock, to get as many accurate formations as possible. So here we've got the entrance to what in the real Wakefield was some carriage sidings, and then went up to a goods shed. And so we've got those similar sidings here. Obviously they didn't go underneath the main line, but I've tried to recreate them to get the operational interest. And then you'll see the track disappears underneath here, and that goes into the bottom level staging, which sits above the top sits below the top staging that we talked about. And if you look up here, you can see the Yorkshire Pullman now coming back around from having gone and reversed itself under the bottom staging, which sits underneath the colliery and top staging that you saw over there. And that's why the layout is called that folded dog bone. This is actually a nice spot to stand and watch the trains climb up the hill up through here, and the Yorkshire Pullman just stopped. Yeah, it's been, I'm pretty happy with the way all of that turned out. I've obviously got to paint the fascia. I've sort of got that far, pretty happy with it, but then I get into an area where there's lots of electronics, and I've just got to make sure that I can access them in the future. The reason that the train stopped before is because I wasn't doing anything with this wireless throttle here. The layout is actually controlled by NCE with what was a power cab and is now a smart booster and so on. So the layout is powered by this smart booster, which is now an SB5, not an SB3A, and that runs runs the whole layout. So that's part of adding on to the NCE starter set. The other thing that is really central to the layout is this little box here, which is a Raspberry Pi, and that Raspberry Pi runs the Java Model Railroad interface, and that allows me to have wireless throttles, and so I've got a few of the TCS wireless throttles now running around the layout. That monitor is actually turned off at the moment, but also displays JMRI, or I can put it on a virtual network on my laptop there as well. This is the Mimic panel for the bottom staging. The LEDs on there indicate both the points and also whether there's trains in occupying those sidings. The reason there's two LEDs there is one is an approach LED and the other one is a stop LED, so just to help me get trains into staging without actually having to see them physically. There's a couple of switch 8s there, NCE switch 8s, that control all of the points in staging on both on the bottom level. A railroad amp meter just to keep an eye on things, and various electronics above my bit of a messy desk. And you can see here some of the other electronics. Moving up to the top staging panel here, which is powered by Tam Valley switchets, which are accessory decoders, but also have a button panel as well, which you can use. So I have both accessory decoders running all the servo points on the top, and now an accessory decoder in the NCE switch 8 to run the bottom. So basically I control the whole layout from the controller, which has been really handy when I'm running by myself. And this section here will be the only exposed section of the bottom level reverse loop, just so we can enjoy a little bit more of the trains. And yeah, that gives you hopefully a bit of an overview of Wakefield West, the layout.